Good morning to all. We are seeing the pattern 2 of 7 patterns. You all know pattern 1 is blue portal tract, pattern 2 is green portal tract, pattern 4 is distressed hepatic lobule, pattern 4 is fatty or bubbly liver, pattern 5 is calm liver where it looks like normal, pattern 6 is scarred liver, and pattern 7 is tumor liver, so or mass liver. Now we are seeing the pattern 2. I just want to end it with how to approach the cholestasis. As you all know, cholestasis can be acute and chronic, and again clinical history is very important to differentiate acute and chronic. In acute, you see 4 patterns. First, let us familiarize with the normal. Here you can see the central vein, portal triad, and since it's a cholestasis, they have drawn only the bile duct, single normal bile duct. So this is the normal. There are 4 patterns, 1, 2, 3, 4 in acute cholestasis. In pattern 1, it is nothing but acute obstruction, and this is the portal triad. You see a lot of ductular proliferation. These are all the bile ductules, ductular proliferation with the edema and the neutrophils. These are all the neutrophils. The legends are there. You can see these are neutrophils. So there is edema, biliary ductular proliferation, and cholestasis. Here you can see the cholestasis here. So pattern 1 is ductular reaction type, which is commonly seen in acute obstruction. Pattern 2 is pure cholestasis. Nothing happens in the portal triad or ductular region. It is pure cholestasis, and you can see that in sepsis, medication, or reperfusion injury in case of transplant. Coming to pattern 3, it is intrahepatic bile duct disease. Okay, so the lymphocytes are attacking the bile ducts and it causes ductopenia. Remember, we talked about ductopenia yesterday. There also cholestasis can happen, and it is classically seen in late stage of primary biliary cholangitis and in rejection and in primary sclerosing cholangitis. So this is the pattern 3. And in pattern 4, there is hepatitis. Lymphoid cell infiltrate into the lobules along with the cholestasis. The bile ducts are also affected by the lymphocytes, and there may be ductopenia in 4. So this is seen in autoimmune or viral hepatitis and in medications. So these are all the 4 patterns for acute cholestasis. Pattern 1, ductular reaction pattern. Pattern 2, pure cholestasis. Pattern 3, intrahepatic bile duct disease, and pattern 4, hepatitis with cirrhosis. Now we will move on to the chronic. The chronic cholestasis, these are all the changes that are seen. The portal triad is expanded by fibrosis. There is some ductular proliferation, and bile ducts looks normal. There's a lot of cholestasis, and the hepatocytes in chronic cholestasis show 3 types of changes. One is pseudoxanthomatous change because of the intrahepatic cholestasis. Second one is Mallory-Deng bodies, which are nothing but ropey cytoplasmic inclusions. And third one, as I told, any cholestasis, there will be copper and copper binding protein deposition. And where do you see chronic cholestasis? There are few conditions that we already looked into it. Primary biliary cholangitis, primary sclerosing cholangitis, autoimmune cholangitis, and medications. These are all the things where we can see chronic cholestasis. So this is a picture of pure cholestasis in the hepatocytes. You can see intrahepatic cholestasis as well as canalicular cholestasis, and they can be seen in 6 conditions. You remember, pure cholestasis, benign, recurrent, intrahepatic cholestasis are called as BRIC, pregnancy, medications, paraneoplastic conditions, postoperative conditions, and then sepsis. These are all the conditions we see pure cholestasis. Now we are moving over to pattern 3 or distressed lobules. This is the causes of distressed lobule, that pattern. Again, remember A, B, C, Minto, and in the distressed lobules, there may be lymphocytic proliferation, there may be neutrophilic proliferation, and there may be lobular disarray. These are all the three main features that you see in the microscopic picture. The lymphocyte infiltrating the lobules causing distress can be seen in autoimmune hepatitis, primary biliary cholangitis, acute hepatitis, viral ABCD, CMV, EBV, and neonatal hepatitis. In medications, remember medications will cause anything. In leukemia, lymphoma, there will be distressed lobule with a lymphoid infiltrate in the lobules. Neutrophils are predominantly seen in CMV, HSV, bacterial infection, and in fungal infection. In alcoholic hepatitis, Mallory's dengue bodies, usually they attract the neutrophils. You see them along with neutrophils. Medications will also cause neutrophilic infiltration. And in surgical hepatitis, we will see what is surgical hepatitis in a minute. And the lobular disarray can be seen in autoimmune hepatitis. Without any inflammation, it can be there. Acute hepatitis can cause lobular disarray without inflammation. Alcoholic and non-alcoholic liver disease. Medications. Metabolic diseases like alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, hemochromatosis, Wilson's disease, pure ischemia in zone 3 and zone 2, especially associated with medications, can cause this. Hepatocellular adenoma and carcinoma. You have to remember that adenoma and carcinoma can look normal. In a cirrhotic liver, when you see a normal hepatic tissue, that means it's a well differentiated hepatocellular carcinoma. You have to keep it in mind. Chronic rejection and graft versus host disease will also lead to lobular disarray. And to end it, diseases of the vessels, both portal vein, central vein, and hepatic artery and sinusoids will also lead to lobular disarray. So we have to cover a good number of conditions in this lobular disarray. Let us see one by one. Here you can see the lymphocyte in lobules. You may not see portal tracts in many of these pictures because we are more concentrating the lobular disarray. So you can see the lymphocytes that can be present in autoimmune hepatitis and primary biliary cholangitis, which is previously known as primary biliary cirrhosis. Autoimmune hepatitis we diagnosed by plasma cells, but when they go for treatment, even single dose of steroid can cause the disappearance of plasma cells. So again, serological and clinical correlation is very, very important. Coming to acute hepatitis, you all know A and E causes acute hepatitis. This is a nice thing. A and E causes acute hepatitis. But how many of the time we will see acute hepatitis? It's very rarely produced. Biopsy. Acute hepatitis biopsy is done very rarely in acute hepatitis. So that's why we are not seeing that many acute hepatitis in real life. But please remember hepatitis A and E. So here zone 3 is predominantly affected and you can see lymphoid infiltrate, and especially you see the, what is this structure? Paul. See that arrow, Paul?
Yes, sir.
Councilman bodies. Okay, this is individual apoptotic body with neutrophils. Councilman bodies are seen in acute hepatitis, and there may be some cholestasis also may be present because of the hepatocellular injury. So in acute viral hepatitis, you see zone 3 disarray, lymphocytes, apoptosis, and cholestasis. So these are all the picture for acute hepatitis. And this is the high power view to show you the cholestasis and to show you the lobular infiltrate. And in addition to the lobular infiltration, as we saw yesterday, it can be portal inflammation. Portal inflammation also will be present in acute viral hepatitis. So again, these are all the pictures of acute viral hepatitis, portal inflammation. And another point you have to remember, there will be Kupffer cell activity. Remember, there is some injury is going on, acute injury. and Kupffer cells are nothing but scavenger cells. So they will be there they will be increased in number to do the unwanted, to remove the unwanted things. Kupffer cell hyperplasia, especially in zone 3, will be there in acute hepatitis. And necrosis also can be seen in acute hepatitis. Because of the damage, necrosis will be seen, and once the necrosis is healed, it will be replaced by fibrosis. You have to know the difference between, microscopic difference between acute hepatitis and chronic hepatitis. In acute hepatitis, it predominantly in zone 3, whereas in chronic hepatitis, it is portal and zone 1. Cholestasis will be more in acute hepatitis. Kupffer cell activity will be more again, as we saw it. Necrosis, both single cell, which is known as Councilman bodies, and confluent necrosis are very commonly seen in acute hepatitis. Councilman bodies or acidophil bodies are seen in acute hepatitis. Usually there is no fibrosis in acute hepatitis, whereas in chronic hepatitis you see severe fibrosis. Please remember this table to differentiate acute and chronic hepatitis. Again, as I told you yesterday, whenever there is a viral hepatitis, we have to think of A, when it is acute, A and E, when it is chronic, B, C, D. But other viruses can also cause hepatitis. This is a picture of EBV. Without this label, I cannot say this is EBV because there is no specific picture. Again, lobular disarray with increased number of lymphocytes, but you have to go for clinical history. That is very, very important. Now we are coming to neonatal hepatitis. Neonatal hepatitis is very confusing with biliary atresia. So that's why I put this table to differentiate neonatal hepatitis and biliary atresia. In neonatal hepatitis, you will see lot of giant cells with the necrosis in the lobules and the extramedullary hematopoiesis. Remember, these are all neonatal liver biopsies. And reticulin stain will show alterations. I will show a picture. Whereas in biliary atresia, what is happening? There is atresia of the biliary structure either in the liver or outside the liver. So it is more like radiological diagnosis, because when you do radiology, you may see the atretic biliary tree. In the biopsy, because of the obstruction, there will be a lot of ductular reaction with the biliary flux and the portal fibrosis. Reticulin stain won't show any alteration in biliary atresia. See, this is the classic picture of neonatal hepatitis. I think you all appreciate the giant cells, increased number of lymphocytes, few scattered neutrophils there, and you see the reticulin. If I don't tell you that this is a liver, you hardly know that it is liver. This is more like any other structure. The biliary, the lobular pattern will be distressed, and the reticulin stain will show the changes in neonatal hepatitis. Whereas in biliary atresia, it's predominantly cholestasis. Okay, because of the atresia, you can see the cholestasis here, and there will, because of the obstruction, the triad will be seen: biliary proliferation, neutrophils, and portal edema and fibrosis. And if you allow these conditions, they will go to cirrhosis. That's why liver transplant has to be done as early as possible in biliary atresia. When it is intrahepatic atresia, there will be a lot of biliary ductular loss with the portal inflammation and fibrosis, and again cholestasis will be there. I am again telling biliary atresia is a clinical diagnosis. We have to correlate with radiology and pathology. Medications, you know, anything can be caused by medicine. So this is the oil power immersion, just to show you the nice lymphoid cells invading into the lobules or infiltrating the lobules in case of medications. Now we are going to neutrophils in the lobules. CMV inclusions. This is the nicest CMV inclusion you can see, surrounded by neutrophils, and we are seeing the neutrophils in the lobules. Neutrophils in the lobules can be seen in like a micro abscess in CMV infection. that you have to remember. Then Mallory-Deng bodies. This is a case of alcoholic hepatitis where you can see nice Mallory-Deng bodies here surrounded by neutrophils. Okay, this is the another condition where you see neutrophils. Surgical hepatitis is a special condition, but this is nothing to do with liver disease. Can you all appreciate the neutrophils filling up the sinusoids? These are predominantly seen as a iatrogenic change, where when you put too much of pressure on the liver, especially when you are taking the liver biopsy, wedge biopsy of the liver, you can see a lot of neutrophils coming there. The surgical hepatitis is predominantly seen in wedge biopsy and partial resections. It is never seen in core biopsy, because in core biopsy you don't put that much of pressure on the liver, whereas in other conditions you put pressure on the liver, and when you take the wedge biopsy, there will be stasis of neutrophils in the sinusoids. That's why it is known as surgical hepatitis, neutrophils in the sinusoids. Now we have seen autoimmune, we have seen biological, we have seen chemical. We are moving over to metabolic diseases that causes lobular disarray or distress. Lobular distress. Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, it can present with hepatitis, it can present with fibrosis, it can present with lobular inflammation. But the classic picture for alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency is the PSD positive globules. These are morphologically abnormal alpha-1 antitrypsin that are not able to be secreted outside the liver. That's why they accumulate. Again, clinical history is very important, and involvement of lung by panlobar emphysema will be there. Please remember lung and liver involvement in alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Now we are moving over to hemochromatosis. This is a nice gross picture of a liver which is more rusty in appearance, and this is more cirrhotic liver. See the coarse fibrosis running. So grossly we can diagnose micronodular cirrhosis and rusty liver, and that cirrhotic nodules are seen microscopically like this, and when you go to the high power you can see the pigments within the hepatocytes. So this is the rusty liver in hepatocytes. Again, in hemochromatosis, you have to remember other two organ involvement of the pancreas and involvement of the heart. Very important for hemochromatosis. This is another, I loved this picture, that's why I want to show this. Another nice cirrhotic liver with rusty liver. If you do Pearl's Prussian blue stain, you can do the you can see the increased number of iron pigments. Okay, that blue pigments, it can be in a canalicular pattern or it can be in the intrahepatocytic pattern. Pearl's stain, and I will tell you how to grade the Pearl's stain when you do the topic on pigments in the liver. You have to differentiate hemosiderosis from hemochromatosis. When the iron is seen deposited only in the Kupffer cells, not in the hepatocytes, only in the Kupffer cells, and here Pearl's stain predominantly in the Kupffer cells, you have to think of hemosiderosis. This can be seen in patients with the hemoglobinopathies when they undergo repeated blood transfusions. Now we are moving over to lesions of the vein, artery and sinusoids. In the central vein, please remember two diseases, Budd-Chiari syndrome and veno-occlusive disease. In Budd-Chiari syndrome, acutely you see thrombosis. As I told you before, they never biopsy in acute liver conditions. Predominantly we see chronic. In chronic Budd-Chiari syndrome, we see organization of the thrombus with the recanalization and sclerosis. And this terminology you have to remember. Reverse lobulation. See, usually fibrosis happens in the liver around the portal tract, whereas in Budd-Chiari syndrome, the fibrosis happens around the central vein. That's why it is known as reverse lobulation. We will see the picture in a minute. Then the veno-occlusive disease, In acute veno-occlusive disease, you see the denuded sinusoidal lining with hemorrhage. Again, they won't biopsy for a acute stage. Whereas in chronic, you see lot of sclerosed and obstructed central vein. Okay. And coming to the portal vein, again it's inflammation of the portal vein, and you see some changes in non-cirrhotic portal hypertension. We will see it in a minute, where occlusion of the large and small portal veins happens with nodular regenerative hyperplasia. Please remember nodular regenerative hyperplasia in cases of non-cirrhotic portal hypertension. So this is the Budd-Chiari syndrome. In acute, there will be, because of the obstruction of the central vein, there will be back pressure, and it will show predominantly zone 3 chronic venous congestion. The special stain, you can see the fibrosis around the central vein. This is known as reverse lobulization that happens in Budd-Chiari syndrome. Veno-occlusive disease, I don't have a nice picture to show it in acute phase, but this is a beautiful picture to show the chronic veno-occlusive disease or veno-occlusive disease in a chronic stage, where there is complete occlusion of the central vein with recanalization. Here again, complete occlusion of the central vein. Now we are moving to portal vein phlebitis. Here you can see the portal triad, where you can identify the bile duct, hepatic artery, and this is the portal vein area with the extensive inflammation. In any sepsis, it can cause. Coming to the non-cirrhotic portal hypertension, there will be dilatation of the portal vein and herniation of the portal triad tissue within the portal vein. You can see very nicely. Here you can see the dilated portal veins and herniation of the tissue into the portal vein can be seen nicely in non-cirrhotic portal hypertension. And in cases of severe obstruction of the portal vein or hepatic artery, you will see a lot of necrosis, ischemic change, infarct. And as I told you, it can be panlobular or it starts with zone 3. That's again, you have to be careful when you are interpreting. In heat stroke also, you can see lobular, you can see the lobular changes. It is zone 3 necrosis, and specifically if you look, you can see the spheroid pigments in the macrophages. Now we are moving over to the hepatic artery and sinusoidal and capillary diseases. In the hepatic artery, it can undergo vasculopathy of rejection. We saw it yesterday, or it may undergo thrombosis. It is ischemia, more in the zone 3. In the sinusoids and capillary, you all know of chronic venous congestion, where the sinus is dilated and congested, predominantly in zone 3 in cases of right-sided heart failure. Piliosis is nothing but RBCs in cystic spaces without lining epithelium. The differential diagnosis here is hairy cell leukemia, very, very important. And again, it's a multiple choice question. Piliosis in the liver, what are all the conditions you see? You can see in other conditions, but it's hairy cell leukemia is one of the main differential diagnosis for piliosis. And we already talked about amyloidosis in the space of disease. And in case of DIC, you see sinusoidal fibrin. Sickle cell anemia, this is more of interest. Nobody do liver biopsy in sickle cell anemia. But in autopsy studies in sickle cell anemia patients, you see sinusoids filled with sickle-sized or sickle-shaped RBCs. We will see some pictures. What is this diagnosis? Anilia?
It's congestion of liver, nutmeg liver.
Nutmeg liver, super. See, it is very difficult to differentiate nutmeg and the liver. It exactly looks like the same. Okay, and these congested red areas in CVC liver, the congested red areas are sinusoidal congestion, and these yellowish or grayish areas are the normal liver tissue. and this is excellently reproduced in this picture. This is the central vein where you can see sinusoids filled with RBCs, and you can see the hepatocytes which are more clear in between the RBCs. This is chronic venous congestion. And this is pileosis, where you see cystic spaces filled with RBCs and there is no lining epithelium. 3 T's: tuberculosis, tumor, and transplant. The tumor you have to remember is hairy cell leukemia. Amyloidosis, again this is autopsy liver. The liver will be mildly enlarged and it will be greasy to touch. There are 2 conditions where the liver will be greasy to touch. One is fatty liver, other one is amyloid. In fatty liver, it will be more yellowish in color, whereas in amyloidosis, it will be more on the tan side. And this microscopy nicely shows extensive amyloid deposition in the space of disease with atrophy of the adjacent hepatocytes. Again, high power view, atrophic hepatocytes, amyloid. Congo red, positive here. It's again space of disease and perivascular pattern. This is DIC. Usually DIC, again they won't do the biopsy, but this is autopsy liver where you can see lot of fibrin thrombi in the sinusoids. Whenever you see thrombi within the blood vessels or vascular spaces, think of DIC, and eclampsia is one example of DIC. Sickle cell anemia, you can all see the sinusoids dilated with sickle-shaped RBCs. There are some conditions that causes necrosis without or minimal inflammation in the lobules. Again, what are all the conditions that do necrosis without or minimal inflammation or viral infections? Remember, I showed you some slides of herpes and adenovirus. We will see it again. Herpes and adenovirus produce extensive necrosis. Confluent or massive or fulminant hepatic failure will be there. In the medications, acetaminophen or paracetamol causes zone 3 necrosis, ferrous sulfate causes zone 1 necrosis, and INH causes again massive necrosis. Ischemia also, as you know, produces necrosis. It can be due to hypertension, it can be due to heart failure, or it can be due to hepatic arteritis. Hepatic outflow obstruction, we saw, that can also cause necrosis. And there is a special condition called fibrosing cholestatic hepatitis that causes massive necrosis with minimal inflammation. It will show cholestasis and pericellular fibrosis. Especially this is seen in hepatitis B and C recurrence after the transplant in a immunocompromised host. When you see extensive fibrosis and cholestasis with a history of transplant, please think of recurrence of hepatitis B and hepatitis C. So this is a case of HCV. See how the liver is very much smaller in size, grossly. It's collapsed liver. Okay. And this is because of extensive necrosis. And if you see carefully in the thin rim of viable hepatocytes, you can see the eosinophilic inclusions. So this is HSV infection. Medications can show any changes. It may be zone 3 necrosis. It can be mixed hepatitis with the cholestatic picture. It can be a poorly developed portal reaction, bile duct damage, neutrophilic infiltrate, eosinophilic infiltrate, even granulomas. As I told you before, always think of drugs as a possible cause in any changes of liver that you see in liver biopsy. See, this is the paracetamol poisoning where you can see zone centrilobular necrosis. In this picture, you can very nicely see necrosis around the zone 3. This is methotrexate producing fibrosis. This is disulfiram producing intracytoplasmic PAS positive inclusions. And it will have a ground glass appearance, and as you know already, the ground glass appearance is the DDR hepatitis B, low frost disease, and storage disease. Please remember disulfiram that can also produce intracytoplasmic PAS positive inclusions. Halothane poisoning will cause acute hepatitis with the interface hepatitis. Again, it's a differential diagnosis of viral hepatitis. Chlorpromazine. I'm just showing what are all the possible things. Biliary damage, eosinophils, apoptosis, Councilman bodies can also seen again in chlorpromazine poisoning. Augmentin, very characteristically it shows ductopenia. This is a portal triad where you don't see any bile duct. Ductopenia can be seen in augmentin. Cholestasis can be produced by many medications, canalicular cholestasis. Even granulomas can be produced by medications. You have to keep all these things. Here you see balloon degeneration, feathery degeneration, intranuclear intrusions, some fatty change, some pericellular fibrosis in this special stain. And these are the biopsies taken in a patient taking tamoxifen. So always ask for the history of medications. Sinus, here you can see extensive sinusoidal dilatation. Okay, and this is a case of oral contraceptive intake. And this is the condition where I thought I told you have to think of hepatitis B or hepatitis C recurrence in a post-transplant setting. It is a fibrosing cholestatic hepatitis. You can see extensive fibrosis forming pericirrhotic conditions. This patient had a history of liver transplant. So always think of hepatitis B or hepatitis C recurrence in post-transplant. So let us stop with that, and the pigments we will see it in the next